Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Career Lunch Break. I am Erin Lewber, and we have a very special episode today because we're turning the tables. I'm not doing the interviewing, I'm being interviewed. So today I have with me my colleague, Eva, who works in my practice with me. If you don't know her, I'm going to have her do a quick intro, and then she's going to turn the tables on me and ask some questions. So, Eva, over to you.
Hey, everybody. So, as Erin said, my name is Eva, but quick introduction. Again, I'm Eva. I'm originally from New York. I'm based in central Pennsylvania now. I'm a former teacher and instructional coach, now working in the world of educational technology sales. As Erin said, I am on her team as a career pivot coach, focusing heavily on people that are making those career pivots, just as I did. All right. So, we're going to get into it. And my guest today has reinvented herself more than once. She's turned that skill into an entire business. She started with a little bit of a degree in human resources, realized that wasn't the path. She pivoted hard into sales and climbed her way to the head of sales. Now she's a director of account management at Amazon, but somewhere along the way, she got really good at figuring out her own career moves that she started helping other people do the same. So for the last 7 years, she's been coaching folks through pivots, promotions, and figuring out what actually matters to them professionally. Outside of that, she's based in Michigan, she's got 2 kids, and somehow has the time to help people untangle their career confusion. Hey, Erin.
I think you just out podcasted me on my own podcast.
I've been waiting for this. This is my first ever podcast, so I've been
Anyways,
waiting.
our new podcast host every week will be Eva. Thank you for that introduction. That was very accurate and nice of you. And I'm happy to be in the hot seat. This is kind of fun.
Awesome. All right. So we've got about 30 minutes here. So got a little bit of a mix of questions here for you. So let's start off easy. What made you realize that human resources wasn't it?
I don't know if it was ever it. I think I was at a very, we'll call it a dark time in life where I think many people will connect with this, but I wasn't happy in my career for many reasons. And so human resources was like this, just like flinging my body towards something that seemed like in theory would be a good thing to do because I read a few things about it. And so it really was a response of, it wasn't the right response, but it was a response to things weren't working in my career. I wasn't making what I wanted to make. I wasn't feeling challenged and satisfied. And so I thought, I this feeling of discomfort and turmoil, like I have to settle this. I have to make this have purpose and I need to go for something. And so I figured that if I just picked something that was very different from what I was doing, because I was in the grocery industry, I was running my family's business, and then I worked for Trader Joe's corporate for a while. And those were lovely experiences, but they were very retail heavy. They were, leadership roles within retail, but long hours, nights and weekends. And I was like, I'm just going to go do something completely different and go for an HR degree. And I thought that I needed the degree to be credible in a space. So I went and invested a whole lot of time, effort, and energy and money into a degree that I actually never finished.
So HR degree dropout to
Yeah.
Amazon director. What would that HR student think of you now?
I can remember at that time looking at people who were more in a place where I am today in my career and thinking, "Oh my gosh, they have it all figured out. They've solved all their problems and it's easy." I think I would have her know that when you do good inputs and you just keep pushing for forward, that you'll find where you need to be because it works out in the long run. When you make good inputs, it always works out in the long run. But I also think what I'd want her to know is that speaking as me sitting in this chair today, no one has it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. And so that sort of that phantom feeling that so many of us have that says, there's something wrong with me, with my career, with my life. I haven't made the right choices. That happens to everybody, and it happens in waves or seasons. And I really do think that we go through these almost like 10-year cycles of something working for us, and then we sort of outgrow it for whatever reason, whether our personal preferences change or our career interests change or whatever. And so sometimes those periods of tension, they feel wrong, but really they're actually very right. And I think that that's something that today I would want former Erin to know, is that this is just an organic moment where it didn't fit anymore and it needed to change. But I treated it as panic instead of an opportunity. And so some of my responses were panic responses instead of being more strategic, more like, okay, let's figure out what's next.
So speaking of figuring out what's next, was that pivot into sales intentional or was it random? Like, let me do this until I really figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Um, So I never wanted to be in sales. And
Same.
what I've realized is that I've always been in sales. Even when I was in retail, it's retail sales. You're working with customers, you've got relationships, people are coming and going, you're educating, you're solving problems in the moment, and you're doing it in a physical store where someone comes to buy a product. In my case, it was food, and it was really fun because people would come in when they were hosting and having events and doing important connecting things. And so I never really realized that was sales, but it's the probably purest form of sales is just interacting and transacting with a person and solving someone's problem. And so when I moved into recruiting, which was kind of my next section of my life, which I guess I did kind of do something HR-esque, but I worked more in the staffing industry where I was doing, temporary placements, direct placements with clients. That was definitely sales. It was relationship management, both with clients, so big corporate clients, and then it was also relationship management and selling with the candidates, like matching people for opportunities. So um, it's funny that I never really wanted to go into sales, but when I look at it now, sales has always been the undercurrent of everything that I've done and enjoyed. And I think it was a lot of it was because I had a misconception about what sales was. Like we all picture the person at the furniture store like waiting to pounce on you or the car salesperson. And really at the end of the day, it's about, solving somebody's problems, understanding, getting to the root issue at hand, and then creating a solution. And that's actually really fun.
Yeah, and I always say, like, I used to picture sales as, like, the car salesman dad from the movie Matilda, and, you said you didn't wanna be in sales, and I think that that's the case for a lot of people, especially women, and that was the case for me, like, when I was thinking my career pivot, I was like, "Never sales, never sales, never sales," and ta-da, hello, here I am,
Yeah.
in sales. So, when you're working with your clients when you're coaching your clients into a new career or to grow within their career, how do you tackle that misconception about sales and how often are you met with resistance?
Well, I think most people just come in with a preconceived notion, and I think our assumptions, whether it's about a job or whatever it may be, we carry a lot of assumptions as human beings. And so getting to the bottom of what the assumptions are is, I think, a very important first step. So for me, when I'm sitting with somebody, it's always a question of, tell me what you're considering. And my next question is, why? And I don't know if, people have heard the 5 whys, right? Where you go kind of like 5 layers deep with why, because you really get to the root reason then. And you can do that same thing for why not this thing over here. And so as I talk with somebody and I try to understand, tell me why you chose this. Tell me why you chose this. Well, why did you pick that? Why does that mean something to you? What we usually get at is the core motions or the core activities that they like to do in their job. If you like to be interacting with people on a daily basis and a little bit more out and having variety in your day, well, then sales might actually be for you because every day does look different. And I would say that maybe conversely, if you're sitting at a desk and you're working more in like a data analytics role, yeah, you're going to have internal meetings and stuff, but you're not going to have this wide variety of people that you're interacting with day in and day out in all these different dynamic situations. There's kind of a consistency to your function. So, all that to say, I think when we go into a conversation about sales or about what they want to do next, I think it's more about just reframing what sales is, understanding what their beliefs are or what their kind of preconceived notions are, and then playing around with that. And for some people, it really isn't a fit. They don't want to do those things, and that's cool. But for people who are on the fence or who think they, maybe can't do sales, a lot of times those are the people who come back a couple years later and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I was not considering this because it's exactly what I want."
Yeah. Sales is for all of us who got talks too much on their report cards and have been told you ask too many questions. And, that's part of being a good salesperson and being an account manager, an account executive, whatever it is in sales, right? Is being able to ask those questions and hold those conversations. So shifting gears a little bit, you do obviously a lot of coaching when it comes to developing people on your own team and your full-time job, but then also supporting people outside of that with career development, career growth, career pivots. Do you have those conversations with your kids yet? what they wanna be when they grow up? How do you handle those talks?
Yeah. So I have this side passion in life around education and kids and just like how we're forming the way kids think about their futures because I do believe that we used to say like the old school way of, first people would go and they'd get a job where they would work 30, 40 years at the same employer and they would never leave. And then we were like, oh, that's not the world anymore. Everybody's wanted to go to college and get college degrees. Now I think it's less about what do you want to do when you grow up? And for me, it's like envisioning the full life that you want. What is the life that you want to have? Because then we can really talk about the trade offs. Saying you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, people used to say that because, like, well, doctors and lawyers make a lot of money, and I want to make a lot of money. Well, again, why? Talk to me about that. Like, what do you want your life to look like? Because I can also tell you that when you get started in those fields, you spend years going to school and working long, grinding hours. And if you wanted to start a family or have a relationship, those things might not be as well supported as you pursue the profession you chose. So, with my kids and with people, when I sit with a client, we really talk about the life you want to build versus just like, what do you want to do next? Or like, what are you going after? Understanding why, because one of my little quotes that I always say is a job is a means to a life, right? A job should enable the life that you want. And sure, that comes with income and it comes with opportunity and it comes with learning and all of those things that are meaningful in different ways. But that definition looks different for every person. And so understanding all of the facets of almost like a pie chart of your life and then how that fits together, I think is a really important conversation. I'm having that with my kids. I think we need to be having more of that type of conversation with young people in general.
Yeah, and that I think that it needs to begin at a younger age. Like, as a former teacher myself, I feel like we started these conversations in high school, but at that point, they already have those preconceived notions, and not even preconceived notions about roles, but, like, about what they're good at
Yeah.
already. Like, "Oh, I'm good
Yeah.
at math, or I'm good at ELA, so I'm gonna do something that relates to that." So, yeah, it's important to start those conversations. Um, have you ever been working with a client and, you dug in, you know the why, what type of life they want, and then they say to you, "Erin, I know what job I want. I want blank." Have you ever heard that and thought, "Oh, no, that's not a good idea for you?"
Oh gosh. I have to like go into the archives a little.
The archives, yeah.
I don't, okay, I'm going to give you actually, so I don't know if it's so much about a discipline
Mhm.
and like the type of role, but the scope of the role. So the example I'm thinking of is actually someone who I'm working with right now. And this person came to me, and they've had a long career in sales. And they said, I think after years of leading as like a director and VP level, I just want to go back to being an individual contributor. I'm burned out. I don't want to do this anymore. And so at first pass, I was like, all right, I mean, you're a mature professional, you know what you want. Like, we can totally work on this and talk through this. But as we started going through the conversation, one of the things I think I'm quite good at is watching people when they talk and starting to notice when you animate, when you light up, when you start to move more, you smile more, you lean in. And what I noticed was this person really loves sales leadership. They love reading about it. They love applying, new techniques. They love coaching. And so I finally stopped and I was like, do you really want to be an individual contributor or are you just burned out? And so we started to go down this path of maybe it was the current environment. And, there could be some other areas where we want to make some changes, like the type of industry that you're working in. And another concept that I think is important for people to know about is the idea of equity that you've built. And we talk about equity in a home, like you own a home and, you're paying into it. And so you have this kind of stored up value. And that happens in a career too. You have equity. And so when I was talking to this person who's been a sales leader, what we landed on was that they have a lot of equity as a leader. They have proven performance. So maybe this is an opportunity where we change things. We go a little wobbly, we stick our necks out a little bit by moving to a new industry. And they'll lean on pardon me, their strengths as a leader, and they can close the gaps on other things. They don't necessarily need to shift to this individual contributor role. They can use the equity that they've built as a proven effective leader and place themselves in a new environment. And let's pressure test that. Let's see if you still feel this way after you get a fresh environment around you, a new challenge. And then we'll make a change from there. All of that to say, sometimes people do come in. I like to honor what someone's asking for, but I think it's important as we have discussions to really pick into why are you choosing this? What's the core driver of this? Because a lot of times, the same reason I got an HR degree, that's what I did with that person, right? I stopped them from getting an HR degree, potentially in
Mhm,
like,
that's a
you
good
know,
way to look at it.
like speaking in a analogy or of sorts, right? Like
Yeah.
that moment was like a, "Should I get an HR degree?" And I was like, "Maybe you don't need an HR degree." And
Mhm.
not that I'm gonna ever stop somebody from doing the thing that they want to do, but that's the value of a conversation like that, is having people who've been through things and you're sitting and you're really, like, dumping the junk drawer on the table and you're sorting out the trash that you don't need to consider anymore and really going through, "Okay, what do we have here to work with and what do we wanna do with that?"
Awesome. So, like you were saying, you're very perceptive, but you're able to pick up on things, you're able to pick up on the vibes, you're able to understand people, I think, sometimes before they're even able to understand themselves. And I know that personally from knowing you and from talking
Mhm.
with you. Like you have mentioned things where I'm like, wow, didn't even think about that, but she's right. That was actually what I should have been thinking about. Have you always been this way? Like, was little Erin that little girl that could sort of sense the vibes and understand everything that was going on? Or is that something you learned over time with age?
No, it's me. I've always been. So my mom tells me this story. Oh, I can't believe I'm retelling this story on a podcast. It's so weird. I was in
So
kindergarten.
excited.
Well, it's not that I hyped it up too much, but I was in kindergarten and we had a class pet, and it
Mhm.
was a little hamster, and, we got to pet the little hamster, and it was our little everybody loved the hamster. Apparently, the hamster died overnight one night, and my teacher came in and noticed the dead hamster in there, and so she put everybody on the rug and created a distraction because she had to go get the dead hamster out
Oh,
the cage. Well, she ends up calling my mom because she's like, "I'm pretty sure Erin saw me pull the dead hamster out because she was just watching." My mom's
you're
like,
like a
"That."
creepy little kid. Like, what?
But, like, I don't know, I've always noticed things, I've always seen things,
Mhm.
I've always picked up on things, and even as a young kid, yeah, like, the teacher had to call she's like, "The rest of the kids were totally distracted," and she just I don't know why she was noticing me, but I totally saw me pick this hamster up, and I need to make sure she's okay, that in
And
kindergarten,
were you?
I was fine, yeah. I grew up on a farm. I
Oh,
mean, not that it's
oh,
not sad, but I grew up on a farm, and it's a part of life, right? It's the other side of life, so,
okay.
um, but all of that to say, I feel like I've always been a more quiet person, actually. So when you were saying going into sales and being the loud kid, I was never the loud kid. I was the watcher. I'm quiet, I watch, I pay attention, and in being quiet, I've always found that there's a lot of opportunity to hear what's happening around you or see what's happening around you and put all of that together to, do something, to notice something, to create something, to build something, to help grow something. So, yeah, it's kinda always how I've been.
So you break that sales stereotype, which I
I
think
do.
also speaks to your success.
Yeah, I
No,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I think there's a lot of people, though, who actually break that stereotype, and maybe that is a good one to talk about because a
Mhm,
lot of times it's like you would think the loud, the big personality, and of course, but there's a lot of personalities or there's a lot of people types that can be successful in sales. And some of my most successful people who have worked for me have been very understated, very quiet. And I do think sometimes that while having the big personality is charming and like that can be something that makes you very successful at sales. There's also the other side of like the quiet listener who hears the problem, who solves the problem, who comes to you. And when they speak, they have a very clear thing that they say. And because they don't speak as frequently, it's kind of each word carries a little more weight. The secret, I think, is to know where you fall or like what your special sauce is for you, right? Like yeah, you do. You have the best personality. And like you and I complement well together because we have a lot of similarities, values wise, or like how we think through things. But you're way more of an external person than me. And but like we're both successful. So it's like, how can that be? And I do think it's because you know yourself. I know myself. You know the things that drive you. You know the things that drain you.
mhm.
And when you've harness and understand those things, then you can use them most effectively.
Yeah, and I think it's about that mix, right? Like what I was saying before, like that's like the stereotype that you always hear, but it is important to have that mix of knowing when to talk and how long to talk, but also knowing when to actually listen. And I think that's what a lot of people appreciate when you're selling, right? It's solution selling. You want to be selling a solution, you want to be strategic. Yeah, you want to make sure that you are excited and that you're talking about what you're selling and that you're explaining it in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that makes them see the value and get excited about it. But you also need to take a step back and listen to when they're sharing their pain points and their challenges, and on the spot in your head, be coming up with a solution as they're talking to make sure that you're going to hit what they need. And I think that's what a lot of people get scared of about sales. They're like, it's hard. Like it's hard for me to have those conversations or to think about things on the spot. But at the end of the day, it's a conversation. You talk to people all the time. So it's human. It's one of the most human professions, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah. Speaking of humans or not, growing up on a farm
Mhm.
in Michigan,
Yeah.
tell me about that because I grew up in Queens, New York. So growing up on a farm to me is like something out of a movie. Like,
Yeah.
did you have farm chores? Were the animals your pets or were they your employees?
So, well, let's see. So let's break this down. It all started with 1 rabbit. We lived on 30 acres and I wanted a rabbit. Somehow the rabbits turned into like, at one point, we had 300 rabbits, and we
Like,
showed
what did
rabbits
you think of rabbit?
competitively all over the country and
Wait,
exported them to Japan, and
like rabbit shows?
yes, yes, there's a documentary on it. I'm not in it or anything, but yeah, it's like dog shows, but for rabbits, but you're not, like, running them around. You're like,
So what are you doing?
it's like basically evaluating them on their, like, breed and type and, like, how do they fit the room. Yeah.
This is
So
crazy.
so we can go down that rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole?
But, yeah, I was in 4-H growing up, and 4-H is, it's often thought of as like an agricultural club, kind of like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, but for agriculture, but it's actually very inclusive nowadays. Like, there are, clubs within cities, like, I'm sure there are clubs in Queens where they have science and STEM clubs, and they have volunteering clubs and all kinds of stuff, but I was in the animal side of things. So, we had chores every day. I had to go out and feed the animals every morning and before school and every night before bed. And we had to clean stalls and cages and pens. And um, it was a lot of work. Like it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. I think some of my strongest childhood friendships were from there because these were all kids that had a lot of responsibility. And I'm a first child. Like I'm just
Same.
like, responsible by nature, by birth, I don't know, but living on a farm is good for responsibility, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I showed things, you learned how to compete and how to talk to judges and, like, all these personal skill development things that you don't really think would come out of living on a farm, but, it was a great way to grow up. I learned how to work hard. I think a lot of my I mean, my family owns a business too, so between growing up in a family business and living on a farm, and being a firstborn child, like, my
The
ownership level
You
of
had no other way.
anything that I'm given is, like, off the chart. It's probably, like, not healthy.
Yeah, yep. I mean, similar, no farms
Yeah,
here, but
yeah.
yeah, similar in other aspects. Do you plan to live on a farm again? Do you miss it?
I do miss it at times. There's trade-offs. And, like, we didn't do a lot of traveling as a family
Mm.
between having a business that, my family was very involved with and then having a farm, you don't just, like, pick up and go to Florida for a week easily. So, one of the things that I found I really like with my kids is we do like taking trips. And whether it's a long weekend or it's going away to break up the Michigan winter, we we like to get away. And so sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I really wanna get some animals." And then, my mom will be like, "Well, if you get all those animals, it's really hard to leave." And I'm like, "Oh, she's right," you know? So, I'm in the process of moving right now, and I guess it depends on where I land, and I'm like, I'll let the universe decide. If I end up somewhere that allows me to have some chickens, maybe that's the way of the universe saying I need to have chickens.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's very trusting in the
Yeah.
universe. Very, very trust the process of you.
Yeah.
Speaking of trusting the process, when you're going through a career pivot or even trying to grow within your career, right? Whether it's like pivot coaching or executive leadership coaching, most of the time it's about trusting that process.
Mhm.
But how do you support people in getting them to trust you and trusting that process, especially when you're working with mostly high achieving women? It's really hard for us to trust the process.
Yeah, it is hard to trust the process, and I think that, it we don't always trust the process. I mean, there are times where I mean, I'm working with someone right now, and she's going through what's next in her career, and, I mean, we have days where she's just like, "This is all a disaster," but I think that the neat part of it is and I will say I found this even myself as someone who also has worked with an executive coach for myself, is you lean into that, you choose somebody to be by your side when you're at those moments where you wanna have someone else sitting at that table with you. You wanna have someone kind of by your side, not that they're doing something for you, but you as humans, like, the highs and the lows are gonna happen. That's just it's human. And so to kind of pre-plan and to choose very intentionally to have someone by your side for those moments so that you can talk through them and you keep it in a strategic place. You keep it in a place that doesn't go like far emotional and you're going to get an HR degree. I keep bringing that up, but
Yeah.
that really, for me, I think is the way I like to show up for my clients. It's not that I'm gonna be there and we're never gonna have those moments because I'm there and you've chosen to work with me. It's that we know those moments are likely to happen because we're human and we're very intentionally choosing an ally of a coach or someone to be there so that as we work through that, someone with trusted sound judgment, somebody who is going to ask the whys, who's gonna sort through kind of and get to the root cause, like, that's what we're doing is we're pressure testing and making good decisions. And, you know, I think, like I said, I worked with somebody, and I think that looking back and I'm gonna interview Shane in a few weeks, but, Shane was a wonderful executive coach for me at a moment where I needed to solve, like, a certain version of my life, and he didn't have all the answers, but he asked me the right questions, and he made space for me to sit and figure it out. 100%, I ended up, where I needed to be, even though I didn't know what that was when I started out doing it.
You see, sometimes coaches need coaches. And I think
100%.
that talks a little bit to how sometimes we or you or people, right, get so in their heads and so in the weeds when they're going through something, and then that's all you see, that's all you hear, and then your partner, your best friend, your cousin, your mom, your aunt, whoever you're closest to, whoever's like your person that you're going to, they start to see things in the same way as you almost. So now you're like, "Okay, I need to separate a little bit, and I need to find somebody who's going to challenge me, ask me those questions, and be there for me just in this capacity where the conversation isn't going to devolve into you forgot to take out the trash or who's driving to soccer practice, right? So I think it's another reason why it's important to do something like this for yourself if you're serious about making this change or making this pivot because it's hard enough to do by yourself. Um okay, my final question for you.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the worst piece of career advice you've ever received from somebody?
Oh my gosh. You're just okay, so for everyone who doesn't know, I always ask about the best piece of advice, and you have
I know.
tried both sides. The worst piece of career advice, I don't know that it's advice that no one has directly said this sentence to me, but this is something that I have seen time and time again, and I've felt it myself at times. It's too late to change it,
Mm.
and it is not too late to change it. And, sometimes, like I said, things I have this theory that things kind of come in these, like, 10-year cycles, and maybe it's plus or minus, 3 years or something like that, but there are things that change in life, like, especially for women. If you start as a young professional and then let's say you do choose to be in a partnership or a marriage, and then you decide whether you do or do not wanna have children in your life, and there's you move, you relocate, you have, people who are, where I'm at, like, mid-career, where now you're starting to deal with ailing parents as well, and things that your parents might need more help from you, and so there's these things tugging at both ends for me of, like, I have children and I have parents and everybody needs me, and the thought that your career is rigid and inflexible and unable to move with you is such a prison sentence that we inflict upon ourselves. And again, not to sound all like this is where you need a coach, but like this is where it really does make sense sometimes, where you're just stuck in the muck of your own life. Like you can't see through it anymore. And you're like, this isn't working. I am not, this is not the best it can be. It needs to be better. But to know like what is next, like that is sometimes the value of that conversation because it's never too late. But a lot of people think they're so far in it, they can't come out anymore.
Wow, that was so profound, but I shouldn't have expected anything less from you.
Thanks.
And I think that about wraps up our episode where we turned the tables and interviewed Erin. Thanks, Erin, for being here
Thanks, Emma, for
on your
interviewing
own
me.
podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Until next time, it's Eva signing out as host of this week's podcast.